Before the empire, before the nightclubs, before the lies and betrayals that destroyed a family. There was just a young man with a dangerous dream and a woman who understood exactly what that dream meant. And most fans know James St. Patrick as Ghost, the man who built one of the most powerful drug empires in New York while secretly trying to escape it, but long before the suits, the wealth, and the double life. There was a time when Ghost was just a young hustler trying to survive the streets of Queens. And somewhere in that early journey, he met the woman who would become his partner, his supporter, and eventually the person tied to both his rise and his fall. Tasha Green was not just another girlfriend in Ghost's life, she was someone who understood the game from the beginning. Their connection didn't start in luxury or power. It started in a world where loyalty meant everything and one wrong move could cost you your life. Now with Power Origins on the way, fans are finally getting closer to seeing how this legendary relationship truly began, long before people in New York knew the name Ghost. James St. Patrick was simply another kid growing up in a rough part of Queens. The neighborhood he lived in was not a place where people dreamed about successful futures. It was a place where survival came first. Every block had its own rules. And every corner had people trying to make money in whatever way they could. Young James watched this world carefully. He was smart, far smarter than most people around him, and he understood very early that the streets rewarded power and fear more than anything else. James didn't grow up with the life he later tried to create. There were no fancy apartments or successful business owners around him. Instead, he saw drug dealers, hustlers, and people constantly fighting to stay ahead of everyone else. The streets shaped the way he thought. They taught him that if you wanted control, you had to take it. Waiting for opportunities was never enough. Even as a teenager, James stood out. Teachers knew he had intelligence and potential, but the streets were always close. It was impossible to grow up in that environment and not feel its pull. On one side, there was the path of education and a normal life. On the other side, there was fast money, respect, and influence. The problem was that the second path was much easier to reach. During these years, James also built one of the most important relationships of his life. That relationship was with Tommy Egan. Tommy and James grew up together and understood each other in ways that no one else could. While James was calm, strategic, and always thinking ahead, Tommy was emotional, aggressive, and fearless. Together, they balanced each other perfectly. The two teenagers slowly started learning how the street business really worked. At first, it was small things, running errands, delivering packages, and helping older hustlers move product. But every experience was like a lesson. James paid attention to everything. He watched how money moved, how power was built, and how the biggest players controlled entire neighborhoods. Even back then, James had a different mindset. Most people in the game were satisfied with quick money and temporary success. But James wanted something bigger. He wanted control. He wanted a system that worked for him instead of a life where he was constantly looking over his shoulder. This ambition slowly started shaping the man who would later become Ghost. The nickname didn't exist yet, but the personality was already forming. James learned how to stay calm under pressure. He learned how to think 2 or 3 steps ahead of everyone else. And most importantly, he learned how to hide his true intentions. But while James and Tommy were beginning their rise in the street world, another story was developing somewhere else in the city. A young woman named Tasha Green was also growing up in an environment that taught her the same lessons about power, loyalty, and survival. At that moment, their lives were separate. They didn't know each other yet, but the streets of New York have a strange way of connecting people who are meant to cross paths. And soon enough, the future king of the drug world and the woman who would become his closest partner were moving closer to the moment that would change both of their lives forever. While James St. Patrick was learning how the streets worked, Tasha Green was growing up with her own understanding of power and survival. Her environment was different from James in some ways, but the lessons were very similar. She grew up seeing how the streets rewarded people who were confident, fearless, and smart enough to control situations instead of being controlled by them. From a young age, Tasha understood something that many people around her didn't fully realize. The street world was not only about the people selling drugs or running corners. The real strength often came from the people standing beside them, helping them think clearly and make the right moves. Tasha was observant. She watched how men in the game acted when they had power, and she also noticed how quickly that power could disappear when someone made the wrong decision. This made her develop a mindset that was very practical. She wasn't interested in small dreams or short-term success. She wanted stability, control, and a life where she didn't have to struggle the way many people around her did, unlike many young women in her neighborhood. Tasha was not easily impressed by flashy displays of money, expensive clothes, or quick cash didn't automatically earn her respect. She paid attention to character and intelligence. She could quickly tell the difference between someone who was pretending to be powerful and someone who was actually building something real. This ability to read people made Tasha extremely sharp. She understood personalities, motivations, and weaknesses. If someone walked into a room trying to act like the biggest player in the game, she could see through it almost instantly. Because of this, many people underestimated her at first. They saw a confident young woman and assumed she was just another person attracted to the lifestyle of the streets. But Tasha was always thinking deeper than that. In her mind, the street world was like a business system. There were leaders, followers, and people who controlled the money behind the scenes. The smartest individuals were the ones who could balance loyalty with strategy. They knew when to push forward and when to step back. This mindset made Tasha very different from others around her. As she grew older, her confidence only became stronger. She was comfortable speaking her mind and challenging people who underestimated her. This gave her a reputation as someone who could not easily be manipulated. If she believed something was wrong, she had no problem saying it directly. But at the same time, Tasha understood the importance of loyalty in the street world. Loyalty was one of the most valuable things a person could have. People who betrayed their partners rarely lasted long. Because of this, she believed that the strongest partnerships were built on trust and shared ambition. What made Tasha truly unique was that she didn't just want to be close to power. She wanted to help build it. She believed that the right partnership could create something much bigger than what one person could achieve alone. In her mind, success was not only about money, it was about influence, respect, and creating a life where you were the one making decisions instead of following someone else's rules. At that time, she had no idea that somewhere else in Queens there was a young man thinking in almost the exact same way. James St. Patrick was building his reputation on the streets, learning how to control situations and move through the game carefully. Both of them were ambitious. Both of them understood the importance of strategy, and both of them believed they were meant for something bigger than the lives they were born into. It was only a matter of time before their paths crossed. When that moment finally came, it wouldn't just be a simple meeting between two young people. It would be the start of a partnership that would eventually shape one of the most powerful stories in the entire Power universe. As their worlds slowly moved toward each other, the moment James St. Patrick and Tasha Green finally met was more than just chance. It was a collision of ambition, strategy, and unspoken understanding. At first glance, it might have seemed like just another meeting between two people drawn to the streets. But there was something different in the way they sized each other up. Ghost wasn't impressed by charm or flash. Tasha wasn't impressed by money or a tough reputation. What connected them immediately was a shared vision, a belief that life could be bigger, stronger, and more controlled than what they had been born into. When they first interacted, Ghost was cautious. He had learned early that trust was earned, not given, and that appearances could be deceiving. But with Tasha, there was a subtle confidence that stood out. She wasn't trying to climb the ladder by using him, nor was she blind to the dangers that came with his world. Instead, she carried herself with a quiet strength. showing that she understood the stakes and that she was someone who could survive. Alongside him, Ghost noticed this immediately because he had spent his life evaluating people for the smallest details, the tone of their voice, the quickness of their thinking, the way they reacted under pressure. Tasha passed every test without even realizing she was being measured. For Tasha, meeting Ghost was equally eye-opening. He was different from the men she had known before, calculated, ambitious, and quietly confident. She could sense that he was already thinking beyond the streets, even if he hadn't fully realized it himself yet. There was an intensity in him